What if the villain you've been taught to fear was never the real threat? For over a century, salt has been cast as the dietary criminal, the masked intruder, the silent killer lurking in your kitchen cabinet. Doctors wagged their fingers, dietitians shook their heads, and health brochures screamed in bold letters, "Cut the salt!" But here's a truth worth holding on to. Sometimes the real danger isn't the enemy in front of you. It's the distraction that blinds you from the one behind you. Let's rewind the clock. In the early 1900s, a well-meaning French physician noticed something curious. Several of his patients with sky-high blood pressure also happened to love salty foods. To him, it seemed obvious. Too much salt must raise blood pressure. That was the spark, a small, untested idea, and yet that spark ignited a firestorm that still burns today. But science, real science, isn't built on assumptions. It's built on questions, tests, repetition, and evidence. If a hypothesis can't survive the trials of research, it's supposed to fall. That's how truth rises. So what happened? Fast forward to the 1950s and 60s. Enter Dr. Lewis Dahl, a respected researcher determined to test the salt theory. He fed rats enormous amounts of sodium and, predictably, their blood pressure soared. His findings lit up headlines, captivated institutions, and gave birth to an idea that quickly morphed into gospel. But here's the twist. You are not a rat. And the amount of salt those lab rats were fed, it would be like a human eating handfuls of salt straight from the shaker, every single day. Completely unnatural. Biologically absurd. Imagine testing the effects of fire by soaking paper in gasoline. Yes, it burns, but would you conclude that all paper is dangerous? And yet, this flawed experiment became the foundation for decades of public policy, media messaging, and low-sodium hysteria. So why does this myth still dominate headlines today, even when newer, higher-quality human studies have repeatedly debunked it? Why are millions still being told to avoid salt as if it were poison, while the real triggers of high blood pressure continue unchecked? We'll answer that in the next section. But first, let's go deeper into what should have happened if science had been followed properly, and how the rules were bent along the way. Because the story of salt isn't just about sodium, it's about how one mistaken belief became a medical empire, and more importantly, how it quietly shaped the way your blood pressure is being treated today. At first glance, a blood pressure reading of 120/80 looks like perfection. Two tidy numbers balanced like scales. Doctors applaud it. Guidelines glorify it. Pharmaceutical ads paint it in gold. But what if that golden number is a glass trophy, shiny on the outside, yet fragile and dangerously hollow within? For years we've been told, lower is better. Lower pressure, lower risk. That's the slogan. But slogans don't save lives. Real evidence does. Here's where the story starts to twist. Major health organizations began pushing for tighter blood pressure goals, setting the new bar at under 120/80. At first, it sounds noble, precautionary, proactive. But when that bar gets so low that only medication can help you reach it, what are we really treating? Blood pressure or a number? Because here's what the research quietly admits. There's no strong, meaningful data showing that pushing blood pressure below 120/80 significantly reduces your risk of heart attacks or strokes, especially if you're over 60. But there is plenty of evidence showing that trying to get that low can come at a high cost. Falls, dizziness, fainting spells, loss of balance, broken bones, even hospitalizations, all because the medicine worked too well. It's like trying to park a car on a tightrope. You might land it perfectly, but the slightest wobble and everything crashes. The American Academy of Family Physicians, among others, saw through the glitter. They refused to adopt the ultra-low targets. Instead, they stood by a more grounded, more human goal: keep it under 140/90. Why? Because that's where the balance lies, not in chasing textbook numbers, but in preserving your strength, your stability, your ability to move without fear. Blood pressure isn't just about avoiding heart attacks. It's about staying upright when you get out of bed. It's about walking across the kitchen without blacking out. It's about living, not tiptoeing on the edge of collapse. And sometimes, pushing for perfection can quietly push you into harm's way. Out in the wild, long before nutrition labels and dietary guidelines, animals followed their instincts. Deer cross rivers, elk climb ridges, cattle trudge through heat and dust, not in search of food, not to escape predators, but to find salt. Just salt. A single mineral so vital, so irreplaceable, that entire herds risk their lives for it. They lick stones, chew earth, drink from mineral-rich puddles, all for one purpose: to survive. Because without salt, nothing functions. No heartbeat, no nerve signal, no muscle contraction, no balance, no energy, no clarity. Salt isn't a seasoning. It's software for your biology. And here's the beautiful truth. Your body knows this, even if you've forgotten. The same intelligence that tells a wild animal when to stop running or when to seek shade is alive in you. It speaks through something astonishingly simple: taste. Take a bite of food, and your body responds instantly. Too salty? You push the plate away. Too bland? You instinctively reach for the shaker. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Taste is your built-in gauge. It knows how much you need. It's not guessing, it's measuring. But somewhere along the line, modern nutrition tried to overwrite that ancient code. Don't listen to your cravings, they said. Salt is dangerous, they warned. Yet we never stopped craving it. And it's not because we're addicted, it's because we're wired to need it. Even farm animals, with no education and no dietary guidelines, are drawn to salt licks placed by their caretakers. Hunters know this too, leaving out blocks of salt to attract game. Not because animals are foolish or greedy, but because every living mammal understands: no salt, no survival. It's not a choice. It's a biological truth. So why are humans, the only species smart enough to go to the moon, the only ones foolish enough to fear what our own bodies are asking for? Salt isn't the enemy. It's a signal, a messenger, a whisper from your ancient physiology saying, "I need this to keep going." It's time we stopped silencing that voice. If salt isn't the villain, then who is? Imagine a courtroom. Salt is on trial. The evidence is weak. The witnesses are unreliable. But the verdict is already in. Guilty. Meanwhile, the real culprit slips out the back door, untouched, unnoticed, and far more dangerous. That culprit is refined carbohydrates. Sugar, white bread, crackers, breakfast cereals, pasta, pastries, soda, chips. They don't wear warning labels. They don't taste salty. But make no mistake, they're the fuel that quietly fans the fire of high blood pressure. Here's how the crime unfolds. When you eat too many carbs, especially the processed kind, your blood sugar rises. Your body responds by releasing insulin, a hormone meant to bring sugar levels back down. But insulin doesn't just handle sugar. It also tells your kidneys to hold on to sodium, retain water, and increase blood volume. More blood volume equals higher pressure. It's like turning up the water pressure in a garden hose. The more you pump in, the harder it pushes. Over time, as your diet stays high in refined carbs, insulin levels remain elevated, what doctors call insulin resistance. This creates a cascade of chaos. Meticulous vessels stiffen. Inflammation rises. Heart works harder, and blood pressure climbs and climbs. Yet instead of cutting carbs, most people are told to cut salt. It's like blaming the smoke detector for the fire. That's why many people reduce salt, take medications, follow the rules, and still can't get their blood pressure under control. Because the root is never addressed. Salt may be the scapegoat, but carbs are the arsonist. Now here's the good news. When you cut down carbohydrates, insulin drops. Sodium balance improves naturally. Blood vessels relax. Inflammation cools. The hose pressure stabilizes. And for many people, blood pressure begins to fall without pills. We're not talking about starvation or punishment. We're talking about a delicious, satisfying, nutrient-rich way of eating, one that aligns with how the human body is designed to thrive. It's not about what you remove, it's about what you rediscover.
For years, people have been told to fear food, fear fat, fear salt, fear meat. But what if the problem wasn't food itself? What if the real issue was the wrong fuel? Picture the human body as a finely tuned engine, crafted over thousands of years. For most of history, this engine ran on real food: meat, fish, leafy greens, nuts, seeds, and the occasional seasonal fruit. That's how we were built. That's what our ancestors ate. Not bagels, not cornflakes, not muffins wrapped in cellophane. So when we suddenly switch to ultra-processed carbohydrates, breakfast cereals, white bread, cookies, sodas, it's like pouring maple syrup into a diesel engine. It might start, but don't expect it to last. The solution? It isn't about starving. It's not about eating bland lettuce or counting calories until your head spins. It's about returning to what your body recognizes as food. This is what some now call the proper human diet. A low-carbohydrate, high-nutrient lifestyle that focuses on real, whole foods that satisfy your hunger and heal your hormones.
You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. Just start with one powerful shift. Lower your total daily carbohydrate intake. Most people are unknowingly consuming between 150 to 350 grams of carbs per day. That's like keeping your foot on the gas pedal of insulin all day long. Instead, try this. Start with a goal of 100 grams of total carbs per day. Track what you eat using a simple app like Chronometer or Carb Manager. You don't have to do this forever, just long enough to see the patterns. Focus on nutrient-dense foods, eggs, ate in fish, greens and non-starchy vegetables, healthy fats like olive oil, butter, or avocado, and nuts and seeds in moderation. Listen to your body. You'll begin to feel fuller, more energized, and, most importantly, your blood pressure may begin to shift downward without needing to add another pill. For some, dropping to under 50 grams of carbs per day may be necessary. And for a small group, especially those who battled high blood pressure for years, going even lower to under 20 grams per day can be life-changing. Don't think of this as restriction. Think of it as liberation from cravings, from fatigue, and from the silent burden of rising blood pressure. And the results? More energy, better sleep, weight loss without effort, and often blood pressure that finally behaves. When the body begins to heal, it often whispers before it speaks. A little more energy, a clearer mind, a calm you haven't felt in years, and, if you're paying attention, a blood pressure reading that slowly, quietly starts to fall. But here's the catch. If you're still taking the same full dose of medication while your body is getting stronger, those numbers can drop too low. It's like using crutches after your leg has healed. You don't need them anymore, and if you keep using them, you might trip. That's why tracking your progress isn't optional, it's essential. This is where the real transformation happens. Not just from what you eat, but from how you listen to your body and partner with your doctor. Step 1. Get a reliable blood pressure monitor. You don't need anything fancy, just a trusted upper arm cuff monitor. Avoid the wrist ones, they're notoriously inaccurate. Check the description or pinned comment for a recommended model. Step 2. Measure twice a day. This morning, about an hour after waking up when you're calm and settled. When you're not, evening, after dinner, when you're relaxed, not after an argument or a walk uphill. Always sit quietly for 5 minutes before checking. Feet flat on the floor, back supported, arm at heart level. No talking, no texting. Write it down. Better yet, use a simple notebook or tracking app. The more consistent your log, the clearer your story becomes. Step 3. Watch for the healing clues. When your blood pressure starts to come down, you might notice the lightheadedness when standing up, feeling floaty or top-heavy, fatigue after taking your usual medication. These are not failures. They're signals. They mean your body is responding. The pressure is coming down naturally. And now the medications may be doing more than necessary. But don't make changes on your own. Your doctor is not your enemy, they're your ally, but you have to bring them proof. When you call to check in, be ready. Show them your log. Download your symptoms. Share how you've changed your eating habits. With that information, many doctors will gladly begin tapering your dosage or stopping one of the medications. Why? Because they're not just looking at a number anymore. They're looking at your progress. Step 4. Don't rush the process. Coming off blood pressure meds is not a sprint, it's a partnership, a dance between healing and caution. The goal isn't just to stop pills. The goal is to feel better, function better, and live longer without the cost of side effects. And every time you see a normal blood pressure reading without medication, it's like hearing your body whisper, "You're doing it right. Keep going." High blood pressure can feel like a shadow that follows you everywhere. At the pharmacy, in the doctor's office, even at your own dinner table. It's there, looming, whispering warnings, stealing peace from moments that should be calm. But what if that shadow wasn't permanent? What if it was only there because you were walking down the wrong path? The moment you turn toward the light, the shadow disappears. You've seen now what the real problem is. Not salt, not age, not bad luck. The culprit is a system that never taught you to work with your body, only to silence it. A system that gave you pills instead of power, guidelines instead of understanding, numbers to chase instead of needs to nourish. But that ends now. You know the truth. You know how to eat in a way that heals. You know how to track your numbers, how to talk to your doctor, how to listen when your body speaks. And most importantly, you know that freedom is possible. Not just freedom from pills, freedom from confusion, freedom from fear. This isn't about living longer. It's about living better, right now. So here's what to do next. Go to the description below. Download the free blood pressure tracking sheet. Watch the next video in this series, What to Eat in a Day to Lower Blood Pressure Naturally. Subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell. Because this isn't the end. It's the beginning of your new story. And if you know someone still afraid of salt, still drowning in prescriptions, still eating tasteless food in the name of health, send them this video. Not because it might change their numbers, but because it might change their life. Your journey back to balance has already begun. And the next time you see that blood pressure monitor, look it straight in the face and smile. You're no longer under pressure. You're in control now.